Happy Memorial Day, everyone. I hope you're all having a really nice weekend, and we are appreciating and acknowledging all those who have served this country. So I'm going to be giving you a nice recap of the topics that we've discussed throughout May, which were, the big topics were mental health and Stroke Awareness Month. But before I even get into that, I got a couple of questions this week about genetics. So a lot of people have been told by their doctors or are under this assumption, I guess, that, well, you know, high cholesterol and heart attack and stroke and these things all run in my family. And so I just kind of know that I'm going to have high cholesterol, or I know that I'm going to have trouble regulating blood sugar and that diabetes runs in our family. And I really wanted to dig deep into that thought process and give you some good information about the fact that we are not our genetics. That's really an important statement to think about, because when we are in that mindset that we are a representative of everyone in our past and everyone in our family and in our family line, then we kind of feel like there's nothing we can do. And there's kind of no hope with regards to preventing some of these conditions just because it runs in our family. So that really gives us like a dead end, you know, and I don't think that that's the most healthy way to think, and I'm going to explain to you why. So firstly, when something runs in our families and in our genetics, it's not that high cholesterol is the underlying reason, that the thing that runs in our family. It's possible that it's a genetic predisposition that, let's say, our bodies need more of a specific vitamin or a specific hormone or a pathway that requires detoxification or an antioxidant. We, in our genetics, let's say you as an individual, you might need more of one of those components than many other people in order to keep your cholesterol down. So the cholesterol, the high cholesterol, is sort of the end product. It's the end result of you not getting that underlying nutrient that you need higher doses of than other people. That's the genetic component. The genetic component is not having high cholesterol. The genetic component is missing out on maybe a specific vitamin or maybe a weaker pathway in detoxification or in your gut health. Maybe there's an underlying component that in your genetics and in your family, you just happen to need more of one of those things, or maybe less of one of those things, in order to control your cholesterol. However, the cholesterol itself is not the genetic component. So that's a really important concept to understand, because if we can then go back into our genetics and learn, well, what is the underlying cause that everyone in my family and in my background has this high cholesterol, and just help that underlying cause, reverse that underlying reason, then you won't get that high cholesterol, and you are not, you're not endeavored to end up having that, high cholesterol or heart disease or diabetes or stroke. So let's start looking for that underlying reason and cause and address that in order to fix the ultimate outcome. So that's a really important concept to understand. The second thing I wanted to say here with genetics is, just because something does run in our family, and just because our parents and grandparents maybe had a certain condition, if you are living a life that is different than the way they lived, then that genetic component does not actually have to express itself. So even if type 2 diabetes runs in your family, or high cholesterol, heart disease, stroke, if you are eating a completely different diet than your parents and grandparents ate, if you are sleeping differently, if you're breathing different air, if you're exercising, if you're, addressing your mental health, which is one of the things we talked about in May, and I'm going to review that. If you're living differently, then just because something runs in your family and is genetic does not mean it is going to get expressed in yourself and in your life. So those are two really important things I wanted to address, that it's not a dead end if we have something that runs in our family and just think we ultimately are going to get these things. There's a lot that we can do to, number one, understand what is the underlying cause that this thing runs in our family. And number two, what can we do to address that underlying cause and also live in such a healthy way that even though it runs in our family, it doesn't have to get expressed in ourselves or in our offspring. That's another important and really interesting topic to get into, is that what is in our genetics changes every single generation. So if we live a completely different life than our grandparents, then while we are carrying babies and have babies, that next generation is going to get a different code. They're going to get a different genetic code. And little by little, these things that do run in our genetics change over time. So this is not, it's a set thing that has to happen. Everything is evolving over time, and it's constantly a flexible scenario. So that was really what I wanted to address when it came to genetics. But let's get back to reviewing some of the things that we talked about through May. So May was two big topics. Number one was mental health. And in our first week, I addressed about 10 different steps that you can take to really improve your mental health. And why is this important? Not only is it important because it impacts the way we feel and our mood every single day, but having high stress and sadness, those things cause inflammation in our body, a physical inflammation, just like the same type of inflammatory response as if your body was reacting to a flu, a virus, a food that you don't tolerate, an air pollution. That type of chemical reaction that takes place when your body is in stress, it is the same whether it is a physical stress or a mental stress. So not only is it important to take care of your mental health because of it impacts the way we feel every day, but it's also something that will impact our long-term physical health for the rest of our life. And so some of those, I'm not going to go through all 10 of my strategies that I mentioned in the first week, but please go back. I think it was the first weekend in May, and I mentioned the importance of including time every single day in our life that you allow yourself to put down everything that you're worried about and separate yourself from all the chaos that is taking place, and give yourself those moments during the day where you clear your head and breathe in the air and stay mindful. Think about the moment that you're in, look at everything you're seeing and hearing and smelling, and just stay present. Those moments during the day where you're either meditating, practicing mindfulness, doing breathing strategies, that should be a priority in everybody's life every day. The same way you set a priority to go food shopping, cook dinner, exercise, so should you be including these moments during the day for mental health. Even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, whatever you can get is better than nothing. Stepping outside in the morning, seeing sunshine and fresh air and breathing in the fresh air, that is a very important part of the day. Changing your self-talk and recognizing when you're using terms in your own mind that you would never use to talk about other people out loud. That means you're hurting yourself. You're not treating yourself with kindness and and grace, and those are all important parts of mental health. Getting great sleep every night. Those are some of the things that I talked about that first week. And then the second week, I talked about foods that impact your mental health, because we actually need to have a whole variety of nutrients in our body in order to create the happy hormones. Serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin is that joyful hormone that we get when we hug people and get physical contact. But we actually need specific foods to be able to create those hormones. And I have my list in front of me. Those were eggs and apples and Brussels sprouts and walnuts, bananas, oats, pears, salmon, strawberries, oranges, spinach, sweet potatoes, dark chocolate, yum, and turkey. So that group of foods actually have a whole bunch of those vitamins and minerals that our bodies need to create those happy hormones. And then finally, when it comes to nutrition for our mental health, it's also super important that we're feeding the bacteria that live in our gut, because they release more of that serotonin and dopamine than we even do. So they are responsible for our mood. And so there really is something to be said about all those terms that we always hear, like it was a gut reaction, or I had butterflies in my stomach. And it's all because our gut bacteria is responsible for releasing those hormones. So feeding the bacteria that live in the gut with high fiber fruits and vegetables, beans, the resistant starch that I always talk about in rice, potatoes, beans, oatmeal, quinoa, squash, bananas, all those things, just feeding that ecosystem that live in our bodies is especially important for our mood. And then finally, I got into the topic of strokes, because that was the second half of what I wanted to focus on in May. And the really important thing to recognize with strokes is not only is it important for our blood, we need to have good blood circulation in order to prevent strokes. We need to have thin blood that is moving efficiently and all of those things. But we also have to think about the fact that our lungs is the mother of our kidney. And our kidney is responsible for having that good blood circulation and that good blood flow to prevent strokes. So because if we breathe really strongly in and fully exhale, then we are taking stress off of our kidney from having to clean out whatever we're not exhaling from our lungs. So breathing is a super important part of kidney health and blood health and preventing strokes. Actually, there was a very large study done many years ago called the Framing House study. And they followed people over time, and what they found was that the biggest indicator for health and longevity was not genetics, it was not even diet or exercise, it was lung capacity. Lung capacity, that is the thing that we lose as we get older unless we address it, unless we continue to exercise our lungs, taking full deep breaths and big exhales to make sure we're breathing out the toxins to take off pressure on the rest of our body. So when we do that, we have healthier blood and we can reduce the chance of having strokes. So I talked about that, and then I also talked about foods that are important for blood health, which is a lot of the same foods that I've talked about before when I addressed blood pressure. So things like green tea and beetroot powder. Super good one is beetroot powder if you want to improve the health of your blood. Cinnamon is another good one. Dark chocolate. Having good iron, so either getting your iron from grass-fed and grass-finished meats and pasture-raised poultry, but also cooking from a cast iron pot is really good, because iron is necessary to move oxygen throughout your blood. So that's another good one for that. And I think that was last week. So if you're watching this now and you want to get the full conversation on exactly which foods are good for blood circulation and preventing stroke, then check back for last week's video. So that was a good recap of May. I hope that was interesting for you. I have to check what the theme is for next month, but I'm really excited to continue this trend. Again, everybody, I hope you're having a really nice, long, Memorial Day weekend, and thank you to all of those who have served for this country. Have a great rest of the day and weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next time.